so thrilled to introduce you guys to Carla James, who is the, I just forgot your title, Director of the Guyana Tourism. And I will tell you, I have a vested interest here because I am privileged to get to represent the tourism board. And Carla is going to talk about Indigenous tourism. And Guyana, if you haven't been, it's an unbelievably special place and just privileged to get to sell it. So Carla, you're on.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So nice to be able to connect with you all. And sorry that I can't see you all, but at least I'm glad that you're able to see me. So I think, really to start off, Guyana is really a small country in South America. To give you some sort of idea what that looks like in terms of size, it's the size of Idaho. Until recently, it's really been off the tourism radar. Because of that, we're not touristy, so no crowds, definitely suited for traveling in our new COVID world, or a new norm, so to speak. Majority of the population lives on the coast, leaving the interior is sparsely populated with limited infrastructure. The benefit of that is 80% of our forest is pristine. We have prolific wildlife. This affords luxury that are virtually unheard of this day and age, like traveling for a day or more and not seeing little to no human life, because all the places to yourself, like visiting the National Park, Kaichor, having one of the world's tallest and most powerful waterfalls all to yourself, or simply having immersive and meaningful interactions with our Indigenous people without an interpreter, because our primary language is English.
So great, and I think you're going to go and play a video, and then I'll start asking you some questions.
Sure. Ooh, what happened there? Sorry about that. Technology sometimes, right?
It's always fun.
Yes, go ahead.
Fishing is very important here. It's our culture, the way we live, the way we hunt, the way we farm. We use the bow and arrow for fishing in shallow water. And so I would stand on the bank, wait for fish, and whenever I see fish, anything.
The food that I enjoy cooking is roast fish. We just eat it naturally. Maybe that's why the Amerindians are so strong today. We don't really suffer with any sickness.
There are different groups of Indigenous people. We are from the Makushi. Baskets are mainly made by the male because it's like tradition for men to do handicraft. For us, the Indigenous people, what I believe is to maintain our culture, our way of life, to be identified.
I learned to make cassava from my grandmother and mother. Cassava bread comes from the roots of the cassava tree. It's important to squeeze all the poisonous juice from the cassava. We've been using the cassava bread for hundreds of years in the Indigenous communities. Our Armenian culture is important to my life because it is handed down from generation to generation.
Cotton comes from the plant. We make hammocks, slings, handbags. We make the clothing. We live this natural and communal life because it brings that strength. It brings perfect togetherness. This is wonderful.
Great, and Guyana really is a really special place. I actually have a hammock that I purchased when I was there. This time last year, I was in Guyana, that they wove. I watched them weave the coffee, weave it, and I came back 5 days later, and it was ready. So Carla, Guyana is getting in the news a lot as the next hot up-and-coming destination. Why?
Well, I think, as I said in my intro there, that I think just being off the tourism radar in itself has, I think, a definite pull to it. Guyana is still very much unknown in itself. We're not touristy, so again, no crowds, so definitely suited for the post-COVID world. And I think, having that 80% forest coverage and having prolific wildlife, etc., which, give greater chances to spot wildlife while on tours, being able to immerse yourself in a real meaningful way, learn about our authentic culture and experiences through Indigenous people. I think that really what sets us apart, from any other destination within this region.
Yeah. And you are Indigenous, correct?
Yes, I am.
And
I
which
am.
group are you? Which Amerindian group?
I actually represent the Akawayo tribe. We're mainly found, you may not be familiar with the geographic area, but in an area called the Pacaraima Mountain area, and a community called Camarang. So that's where I am. So if I'm going to leave you with anything today, I will say Erta Benai to you. That basically asks you, how are you? And your response would be Wagaberta, meaning that you're doing okay.
Wagabera. So great. Guyana is recognized for protecting its natural and cultural heritage and providing authentic experience, which is a term that's often overused, but I will tell you guys it's authentic there, and that maximize local socioeconomic benefits. Why is that?
I think first off, Guyana has a long-standing sustainability agenda, and we have a strong conservation ethic. Sustainability is truly a way of life for many, like our Indigenous people. I think just building on that foundation, we've made a concerted effort to foster interministerial, multi-stakeholder collaboration, and ensuring that sustainable destination management and marketing best practices are ingrained in our strategies, our plans, our policies, regulations, even product development, the way we go about doing that, and capacity building initiatives. So yeah, I think, the net result of all the work that we've been doing recently is that Guyana received 6 international awards within the last 2 years, 5 of which has been for as a leading sustainable destination.
Okay, awesome. Tell us about Indigenous tourism in Guyana. What makes it different and special from other areas of Central and South America?
Yeah, I think Indigenous tourism, as we all know, is tourism that directly engages Indigenous people, either by allowing them to manage a site or making their Indigenous culture the focus of the destination. However, again, I think it's so much more. First off, out-migration in Indigenous communities in Ghana, were as high as 80%, which left neglected families, farms, and tourism actually provides that alternative income, which is sustainable through the development of community-owned eco-lodges, craft, tourism activities, etc. It helps to preserve their natural cultural heritage while providing that economic benefit to the community as a whole. And I think for Guyana, the difference is that Indigenous communities actually owns and manages the lodge. So this is not a private investor coming in and they are just hired, but they've actually owned and managed their own lodge. And I think by doing so, they're able to employ everyone within the community on a rotation basis. So creating employment, which is really great. Women are playing a greater role in management of the enterprise and a part of the decision-making process, which is really, really big for us because, women definitely need a seat at the table. So through the framework that we have established, that is happening and happening successfully. I think to top this all off, as I mentioned, travelers are having that immersive and meaningful interactions with our local guides because they too speak English, so it really does make it special. And, working with our tour operators, there are 3 must-see communities when you come to Guyana. And I'm sure you've heard of them because they've won so many awards too over the years. So Surama, Rewa, and Yupukari.
So cool. I'm going to ask a couple of questions that are unscripted here from people. Can you address sustainability a bit? Obviously, Guyana is extremely untouched. How will it stay that way while still welcoming tourists?
Right. So one of the things I think from a national level and part of all our planning that we are doing, we're not really focused on, I would say, increasing the number of travelers, so to speak, but really focusing on the value each traveler represents, which is why we go. I would say in terms of our target group and who we market to, are definitely people that are looking for that unique and authentic experience, and that are really looking to make a positive impact on the people and places that they visit. And those leisure travelers, as we know, they tend to stay longer, spend more. And that's how we're basically going to be progressing on this path, basically.
So what are some of your challenges with tourism to Indigenous groups? And could you just move a slide a little so we can show another pretty picture?
Sure.
Thanks.
Right. So in terms of challenges, I think with starting off any new community tourism product development, I think one of the challenge, because of the way it's structured in Guyana, to be successful, you need to have the entire community buy into that project first and foremost. And the reason that is important is because community leaders are changed every 2 years. So to ensure that there's continuity, you need to make sure that everyone in the community buys in and say, you know, tourism is something that we want to get into. So they hold each other accountable basically going forward. So I think that's really the main challenge. Every other things are things that we can work on. So for example, they don't have technical capacity or have the know-how in managing a lodge or any other enterprise, so to speak. But those are things that we work with them, train them and build their capacity so that they can do it and do it well. And the good thing is the communities that are doing it well, like Rewa, like Surama, we work with them to do peer-to-peer training with other communities that are looking to get involved in tourism. And we have seen so much success from it, basically.
Great. What sort of wildlife can people expect to see in Guyana?
That's a great question. I think because Guyana is known as the land of giants, and some of the places I've mentioned, like Rewa and Surama, are, you know, we're actually referred to as my heaven and earth when I go visiting here, is because you can actually spot a lot of giants of the forest, so to speak. So the harpy eagle, largest bird of prey. For those who are that adventurous, the anaconda, for example, you can see giant river otters, black caiman are just some of the species that you'll be able to see when you go into these locations.
Okay, yeah, it is. You guys, I went camping for 4 days out into the wilderness, and I did not see another human being for 4 straight days. But I saw things like harpy eagles, giant river otters, the most amazing birds. Oh gosh, I forgot the little. I forgot. Yeah, y'all eat them. Some really cool animals. I didn't see a jaguar, but next time I'm there, I hope to see that. So tell us about airline connections from North America.
Okay. Well, actually, I think, you know, just to use the opportunity to highlight that US is actually a very, very important market to us, have been for quite a while. And I think because of that, we, you know, really have good airlift. I think first and foremost, it's perpetual summer in Guyana. So, you know, in terms of air connectivity, we have American Airlines, which has 2 routes with Miami and New York. As a matter of fact, they've just restarted service to Guyana. You know, we've been in lockdown for quite a while, but have started to open up. JetBlue, who was actually supposed to start schedule in April, will now be doing so December 11th. And then we have Copa Airlines that serves through 14 connections in the US. They're actually, and it's actually ideal for more West Coast connections, and then Easter Airlines, Caribbean Airlines. But it's also important to note that we're actually getting a lot of interest right now from other well-known airlines such as WestJet. I think they're hoping to start service in 2021. So there's going to be a lot more options soon for when you decide to travel here.
Okay. So would you do me a favor and move to another pretty photo? But tell us a little bit about how some of the, like Surama, how it runs. I found very interesting to find out how the local communities come across, how they make decisions and things like that. Would you explain that a little? Because these are the kind of things your guests and tourists are going to learn while they're there.
Yes, of course. As I said, consultation actually plays a really big part in managing these community lodges that are owned by the community. And what it actually means is you have to gather everyone to a meeting together, and you don't leave there until everyone comes to a consensus that this is how we move forward. And it's really important, as I said, for the success of you know, that enterprise, or I think just to have that community buy-in, I think is really, really important because it shows, you know, that, you know, they're part of it, they own it. There is going to come a time when they'll have to manage that lodge. So making them part of that decision making process from a very young coming up is really, really key, you know, from a community level. And just so you understand the structure, as I said, you know, there is a tourism committee, but then larger than that, there is a community council. So they too work hand in hand to make decisions with the rest of the community to govern the resources that comes from lodges that they own, basically. So I think it's just really great, Joe. And I think similarly, as I said, most of these communities, they employ all of their community members, but on a rotation. So 1 month off, 1 month on. So everyone gets a little bit of the pie, so to speak, and everyone is involved in every part of the business, whether it's managing the books, whether it is delivering the tours, boat captains, etc. I think there's just enough for everyone to go around, and the rotation has, you know, been working for the communities, and I think that's what they continue to use. And that's the model too, that, you know, when we go into a new area where they show interest in working in tourism, there's a framework, you know, consultation works, rotation works. So we try to use that as a framework in developing any new tourism experience.
So a question we had was, are the people in Guyana happy with its becoming a more popular tourist destination?
Yes, we are. And I think it's really because we're warm and hospitable by nature. And I think too, there's just so much about our culture and tradition that we are willing to share with visitors. And I think that in itself is probably the reason why, you know, we welcome visitors to our shores. And I think not only in the capital, because it's definitely different from the capital city and then the remote locations, but everywhere we're also welcoming of everyone simply because of what we have to share and show as Guyana being a unique destination.
Okay, someone asked a question. In order to protect the Guyana environment as well as the local Indigenous communities, do you have restrictions as to how many travelers can travel to Guyana at any given time? Or I should say maybe into the interiors.
Yeah, we don't have I would say a max number for the destination, but the way the communities, or I think most of our tourist locations are designed, they're small lodges. So that in itself sets the capacity. You're not going to go to any location and have 50 people there at once. Our lodges basically are 8 to 10 rooms. So it's just going to be your group there having the entire place to yourself. And in terms of, you know, what that impact is in terms of degradation for the trails, etc., that you're going to be going on, it's not that great. And tourism is seasonal. So you're there from, well, travelers would come in what we refer to as our dry season. From September to March, April, that's really the peak of travel. And then what we refer to as our green season or rainy season, it's the travel is not so high. It's more for people who are interested in scientific, academic, volunteer education tourism. They come within the rainy season, which is basically April to August, basically.
Tell about some of the different types of tourism that you have in Guyana.
Yes. Right. So there are actually 5 pillars of tourism experiences that we're really focused on promoting and developing. So, you know, nature and nature, active exploration, adventure experiences, culture and heritage, community-led and known tourism, and safe travel, basically.
Okay. Tell us about, you know, one thing you haven't mentioned is fishing with the Indigenous people.
Yes,
that.
Sure. At my very absolute favorite place, Rewa Eco Lodge, I think they're the only place where sustainable fishing is done. And that really involves the arapaima fish, which is a protected species. And basically, that sustainable fishing model is what we refer to as catch and release. So they host visitors there, you know, for quite a number of days, trying to get a glimpse of the arapaima. They're basically caught there, using lures that doesn't damage the mouth of the fish. Take a picture and put it back in the water, basically. And I think through that conservation effort within that community, they've been able to, I would say, restore the healthy population of that particular fish.
Terrific. Can you talk a bit about birding?
Sure. So Guyana actually has 820 species of birds, many of which I think are very easy to spot. I think at all the locations that we offer an itinerary going into the Rupununi, you're going to be able to get a glimpse of many of it, including the harpy eagle, as we said. You know, communities spend a really, I would say, great amount of effort protecting the nests, etc. And from a vantage point, when you go there, you'll be able to see, if you're lucky, you know, harpy eagle feeling its young. I think you did have that experience, Jane, if I'm not correct. And then the capital
amazing. I saw 2 harpy eagles, which is, you know, that is, if you're a birder, that is like one of the iconic birds that people want to see. But no, I didn't see just one. I saw 2.
Yeah, even in the capital city too, which I think is, you know, is very rare. You can actually go to the botanical gardens and the coastlands, and within that city experience, birding experience, you can actually see over 200 species of birds. There are other sought after species like the sun parakeet, which you can see in the Karasabai village. They too have a conservation effort to protect that species, but it's one that you will definitely be able to see because of their efforts, basically.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about Georgetown, which is the gateway for people when they come in. Tell us what there is to do in Georgetown and then what you can do from there.
Okay. So Georgetown, I think, really does capture the true cultural mix of this beautiful country. You know, we come from backgrounds, I would say 6 ethnic backgrounds, which really just makes us that melting pot. And you can be able to experience or understand a lot of it from, you know, the food that you will, the food that you will taste. You can actually have a city market tour where I would say one of our local food experts is called Delvin Adams. Take you on a market tour where you can be able to, I would say, interact with our locals in the market, and really get to know us, I would say, really well because of that level of interaction. And then, of course, I would say most of our cultural festivals and so on, I think are more celebrated within the coastline as well. And you can see that, you know, a really healthy mix of people from Indian heritage, African heritage, Portuguese, Chinese, basically, but you can see that really, really well through our food and culture. And I think the other thing that really makes Georgetown a unique destination is that rich Dutch English heritage. You can see that in our colonial buildings, the Dutch forts, and even, I would say, what do you call that? The cokers, etc., which are built by the Dutch. Georgetown is under sea level, but I would say protected very well by the construction done by our Dutch people with the seawall and our cokers, basically. But it's a really, really beautiful, I would say, you know, city. It's not, definitely doesn't have skyscrapers, etc., but all colonial buildings that are really, really rich in heritage really do make the place a special one.
Yeah. Can you talk about what's open now? Tell us about people who want to come now or in January next year. What is open and how is that working?
Right. Well, right now we have opened our international airports to travel. So it's not only focused on repatriation flights right now. So any traveler will be able to come in. However, right now that travel is restricted only to the capital city. And, you know, there are still some things to be done. As I said, city tours, and for example, birding, etc. But we are now looking at reopening our remote locations and trying to really do that from a point where health comes first, and then travel and tourism. So protecting the health and well-being of our communities, our teams within all of the lodges, And of course, you, the traveler as well, trying to work with everyone to make sure we have dot our I's, cross.
I believe she's frozen.
Basically.
Okay.
So for reopening, I would say for the sector, based on trends that are showing right now, it is, we're looking at Q1 for remote travel locations.
Okay, awesome. So tell us about your tour operators who are selling Guyana. I know we've got Wilderness Explorers is here at the show.
Right.
We also then have the Guyana Tourism Board, which is manned by Jenna from my team. And when people from Georgetown can come in, brilliant us to schedule this during WTM also. And, but so how do y'all?
So, yeah, there are quite a few tour operators that we will certainly recommend, because they are licensed by the authority, and when they're licensed, we know that they're following all the rules and regulations that have been set out to protect the product that we have, and operates at a very high standard to ensure that you're safe when you travel with them. As Jane said, Wilderness Explorers is one of them. We also have Evergreen Adventures Inc. And if you're looking for tours that involve, for example, hiking to Kaieteur, you have rainforest tours. And there's some other coastal, there's not a lot of, I would say, operators that operate within the Rupununi of itself, but there are some that are more operating within the coast.
Great. Thank you so much. You guys, if you have any questions, you can come to my team, you can come to the booth. We're always here to answer questions about Guyana. I will say on my part, I am honored to represent you guys in North America. It's such a unique destination. One thing she didn't say, in Kaieteur National Park, 10,000 visitors a year. So I've twice had the park to myself. There aren't many places in the world that are like that. So it's very, very special. And they are doing an amazing job on trying to protect the local communities. So thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, everyone, for listening in.
Thanks. And anyone who had questions, we will get back to you with anything we didn't answer, but I think we answered most. Thanks.